Excuse me.
Well, on Google, he's an actor. No joke.
Well,
Guys, if you could just give me 1 second, I just want to talk to Lenny real quick.
Carl, are you lonely over there?
Yes.
Keep our seats warm, we're coming back.
I was going
Give them
to.
cardboard cutouts.
I was going to do that. I was telling Nick that before. I was going to put everybody's face on the seats.
There you go.
Yep.
That's all right. We can all come back and sit 6 feet apart.
That's right.
No public, just us.
I think we should come back with masks on. I really do.
Yeah, it's all good. All good.
And of course, Mark was out delivering and his car broke down, so I sent my
didn't start
husband out.
Oh no.
He's out there trying to help him with the car.
Oh no.
God
Yeah.
almighty.
It's always, everyone is in good humor though. So
Yeah.
Mark was like, "What am I going to do?" And I said, "Pete to the rescue."
Oh,
What
God.
happened?
Oh, call me next time. Seriously.
What, to fix Mark's car? Or
No, God, no. God.
Yes,
Okay. And so we have 13 people in the waiting room. I'm going to start letting them in.
okay.
It takes a good solid minute. And once I get everybody in, I'll let you know, and then you begin.
Yes, thank you. A lot of David's team is on there.
Mhm.
Okay, Mr. Supervisor, at this time, everyone in the waiting room has joined us.
Very good. We can start the meeting now. I would like you all to join with me in the pledge so we can start off our meeting. Pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the
To the
flag
flag
of the United
the United
States
States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
which we
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty
and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you. We're starting off the meeting tonight with a public hearing. Before we do that, I just wanted some comments I wanted to share with you before we start. During these challenging times, I wanted to share some thoughts with you. I personally want to thank all our medical professionals, our first responders, emergency personnel, and those who unselfishly dedicated their time, energy, resources, and food to our seniors, those that could not leave their homes, and those devastated by a loss of jobs and in a true financial hardship. Each of you truly have shown Mount Pleasant what Mount Pleasant is all about. Thanks also go out to the town board members who have day in and day out dedicated their time to help others. A special thank you to Lori Smalley and her husband Peter, all their efforts working with the Office of Elder Americans and with our other volunteers, making sure there is food for those in need in our community. Also to Danielle, Jerry, and Tom for all your efforts helping our community. Just a special thank you to Nick DePaul and Amanda Giusilli, for without their help, we wouldn't be being able to host these meetings. A thank you to our residents who have been understanding while the town hall has been closed, and all our employees who have dealt with rotating schedules, remote working conditions, and the focus on the safety of others. Most of our departments have been working to keep potential projects moving forward and issuing permits with the anticipation of work commencing as soon as possible. Without the future projects and the interest developers have in our town, the financial impact would be more serious than it is. Although I am thankful for remote meetings, in times like these, nothing beats face-to-face and seeing all of you in person. I am hopeful very soon that we can get back to somewhat normal conditions. What most likely will be different than the current norm we have been used to. The disinfecting process we initiated from day one will most likely continue, and we will have already proceeded with safety measures that will protect our residents as well as our employees in the immediate future. There have been an obvious economic toll, not only to so many of our residents, but also to our town budget. Thankfully, intelligent financial planning and savings has kept us in a better position than most communities. Rest assured that we will continue to watch every dollar and we will cut where we can while delivering the necessary services our residents deserve. You should be aware there are property tax measures that will take place May 1st to assist those who are STAR recipients and those who need more time to pay their town and county taxes. It was a collaboration of all town supervisors, county board, and the state to create a fair way to assist those in need. Information is posted on the Receiver of Taxes website under updated guidance for 2020 county town taxes due to COVID-19. And finally, in closing, the census is a very important process we must focus on. It will affect the future funding of our state, county, and our town. Please remember to reply if you have not already done so. Thank you for listening to that. The first thing on our agenda tonight is a public hearing. I would ask our town clerk, Susan, to read the notice.
Sure. A public hearing in response to the continuing emergency circumstances caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and consistent with the New York State Governor's executive orders, including but not limited to Executive Order 202.1, the town board shall conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, April 28th, 2020 at 8:00 p.m. at Town Hall located at 1 Town Hall Plaza, Valhalla, New York 10595, to amend zoning text of the Town of Mount Pleasant Town Code to permit child day care centers in the C-GC General Commercial Zone District, Local Law Number 3, 2020, and to be held remotely. The proposed text amendments is available at www.mtpleasantny.com. Anyone wishing to offer public comments shall be allowed to do so by participation in a teleconference. The call-in number will be provided through the Town of Mount Pleasant website at www.mtpleasantny.com. Further, the public is encouraged to offer its comments in writing to the town supervisor by email to agisili@mtpleasantny.com or via United States Postal Service mail sent to Town of Mount Pleasant, 1 Town Hall Plaza, Valhalla, New York 10595. All submissions should be received no later than 6 p.m. on April 28th, 2020. All comments will be entered into the record and distributed to all town board members. Meetings of the town board, including public hearings, will be recorded. Susan Marmol, Town Clerk.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
One other note, if we find it necessary, due to the fact that we're doing this remotely, if the residents feel that they may need more time to respond, to ask questions, we could leave the meeting open this evening and do a final resolution at our next public meeting. But we'll see how the evening goes. With us tonight, David Venditti is the project attorney. So I would ask David if he wanted to start off with the presentation.
One second, Mr. Supervisor. He's having some technical difficulties or trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Carl, do you want to take a motion to open the public hearing or now, or do you want to wait till the presentation?
There he goes. He's in it.
We don't normally take a motion to open it.
Okay.
Do we?
No.
Usually.
No, we take a motion to close.
We
Okay.
could table, we could close, we could,
Well, let's just wait. Let's see if he can get on.
Can you hear me?
yes, David's
Can you
on.
hear my audio?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know why my video, and I had a couple of meetings today, is not coming across, only my audio, and it does not appear that my video is disabled.
No, it's not showing disabled on our end, Mr. Venditti. The only thing you could try is leaving the meeting and rejoining it, but I'm not certain that'll help either.
Well, if you don't mind me waiting a moment, I'll certainly give that a try.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Because I did shave and dress for the meeting. Okay.
Okay. Good to know.
Okay. I have enabled audio, and I pressed start my video, and I still appear to be a black box. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I don't know what to do about it.
Can you present without the video?
I can, because the team sent along, anything that you might want to use. No one will get to see me, but as long as you can hear me, I can certainly present.
So Supervisor, if you'd like, I think we can move ahead with that.
Yeah, the town board has received all the information prior. So I think it's okay for David to proceed with his presentation. As much as we would like to see you, David, we would like to move forward.
All right, I'm very sorry too. It's the first time wearing a tie in 6 weeks. Is the rest of my team signed on?
Yes. Do you want us to enable any of their audio or video?
Well, yeah, I guess at least, sure, because after I make some remarks, then I'm going to turn it over in sequence to members of the team.
Okay, and who is from your team?
David is on.
Okay. We have the petitioner, Mark Mathias for Tunstall. We have Jesse Coakley, the engineer from Mazer Consulting. We have Michelle Bryhoff from Mazer Consulting, the traffic study expert. David Falzerano from Lightbridge Academy, and Justin Mihalik from the architect. We also have with us, although she will not, she's just attending and not presenting, Sally Furcall, design engineer from Mazer Consulting as well.
Okay, those individuals all have access at this point.
Great. And again, I'm sorry that somehow my camera is not working. It did work for 2 Zoom meetings today, but okay, I'll begin anyway. Good evening, Honorable Supervisor Fulgenzi, the Honorable Town Board, Town staff, and Town Attorney, and members of the public. I'm David Venditti of Gaines, Novick, Ponzini, Casu, and Venditti, and I represent the petitioner, Tunstall Holdings LLC, in their petition for a zoning text amendment, for which for the public is an application to amend and supplement Mount Pleasant's zoning laws so as to allow a child daycare center to operate within the general commercial, the CGC, zoning district of the town, subject to compliance with all other zoning and bulk regulations found in section 218-99 of the town's zoning laws. My apologies if some details or dates are off. I don't have the luxury of having my paper files with me in this work from home environment. And now apparently I don't have a working camera either. With us tonight is Mark Mathias on behalf of Tunstall Holdings, the contract vendee, which for the public is the purchaser of property located at 26 and 36 Legion Drive in Valhalla. I want to introduce you to the rest of the team. Jesse Coakley, our engineer from Mazer Consulting. With Jesse is Sally Furcall, design engineer, but only Jesse, as I said, will be presenting on engineering tonight. David Falzerano is also with us tonight, and he is the Vice President of Franchise Development for Lightbridge Academy. And also with us is Michelle Bryhoff, Senior Associate from Mazer Consulting, specializing in traffic studies. And finally, Justin Mihalik, our architect, principal of Jam Arts. By way of background and for the public, this is a petition for zoning text amendment applicable to the general commercial district as a whole, and not a location-specific application for 2636 Legion Drive, which, if the text amendment is approved, would come before land use boards in the town for site plan and special use approval, subject to all zoning regulations and requirements already on the books in Mount Pleasant. We will, however, offer a big picture overview tonight of what is intended for 2636 Legion Drive. That was the impetus behind a petition to amend the zoning text to make this use possible in this district. To summarize for the public how we got to where we are today, this process started off almost a year ago, around May of 2019, by submission of a petition to the Town of Mount Pleasant Board after initial consultation and meetings with the town building and planning department and town consultant, Mr. Cleary, as to how to best approach this process. Accordingly, a petition was brought to modify zoning text in order to obtain clarifications to the CGC district regulations, initially via a modification of the R40 residential district, since all special permitted uses ultimately flow down from the R40 district. We believe that adopting the zoning text amendment would be consistent with the town's then ongoing initiative with respect to updating its comprehensive plan. Review of some of the raw data associated with public engagement responses appear to show various local objectives of, among other things, creating employment within the town, encouraging new small businesses, planning for associated infrastructure in connection with creating housing for a younger workforce, which we think include child care services for young double-income families, filling office space, such as this project would accomplish, finding better methods to utilize existing buildings, which this petition, if approved, would lead to, and creating flexibility in zoning by addressing the reopening and repurposing of existing development and their reutilization. We believe that this petition is consistent with those long-range goals, and the proposed modifications would facilitate the town residents' goals, visions, and needs discussed during the process. The town, in adopting regulations for child daycare centers, recognized the importance and need of providing for such facilities within the town. Chapter 218 zoning under 218-99A1 recognized that, quote, it is the intent of this subsection to encourage the provision of child daycare centers in the town of Mount Pleasant. The town board recognizes the importance of and need for child daycare centers within the town, end quote. Currently, it appears that child daycare centers are limited to the OB3, maybe 4, 5, 6, T1, and T7 districts in the commercial office building zone and MOT districts, as per the planning board's resolution and indication, but not permitted currently in the general commercial district. Importantly, the proposed text amendment in the submitted section 218 attachment 16:2 that the public can find online and that we've submitted to the board for the general commercial district shall still require all child daycare centers to conform with supplemental regulations already found in the town zoning code at section 218-99A. Those regulations would apply to the entire property as the mechanism to regulate the project's size, density, and operational requirements of child daycare centers. Bulk requirements would remain defined in zoning town code 218-99A2B. The required short form EAS, the environmental submissions that we had to make were submitted and all fees paid in connection with the petition for zoning text amendment. Petitioner was thereafter directed to the planning board for their review of such a zoning text amendment change and submitted the matter to them on or about July 18th of 2019. At such time, the petitioner paid all the required fees for the town's consultant's review. And during that review process, the planning board indicated that it was uncomfortable with a wholesale amendment to numerous districts via amending the R40 zone and directed us to study the impact if this use were allowed in just the general commercial CGC district, within which this petitioner ultimately desired to open. The planning board requested petitioner to limit the proposed text amendment and use to the CGC district. And of course, the petitioner complied and appreciated such advice from the planning board. As a result, we were tasked with undertaking and submitting a general commercial district zone study as to identifying properties that might be able to comply with zoning should a child daycare center become an allowed use. We prepared, submitted, and presented on that study before the planning board. We answered numerous questions that came from the board, and the public was also in attendance at such planning board meetings. After review and consideration of our presentations, petitions, zone study, the planning board on November 7th, 2019, made a recommendation to the town board via adopted resolution and found that it, quote, positively recommends that this child daycare center use be permitted in the CGC district, end quote, and resolved that, quote, the planning board finds that if the proposal to permit child daycare centers within the CGC district is adopted, the reuse of the site at 2636 Legion Drive would be a suitable location for such a facility pursuant to the requirements of section 218-99, end quote. Accordingly, the petitioner then proceeded back to the town board in December of 2019, consideration of adoption of this now narrowed proposed zoning text amendment. While we started off in person via work sessions with the board, the current crisis necessitated further meetings and any public hearing be conducted remotely as we're doing now. And we thank the town board for its courtesies and continuation of this petition process. At the town board's direction, the petitioner submitted the traffic study, which will be discussed, and took questions from the board at a remote work session on such study. Thereafter, the town board moved to proceed on this matter to a public hearing, and here we are today. I would like to now introduce Jesse Coakley from Mazer Consulting to discuss the zone study and present that to the public and the conceptual layout. After that, we'd like David Falzarano of Lightbridge Academy to address you, and perhaps address some of the questions that you have posited so far. After David, Michelle Bryhoff of Mazer Consulting will talk to the traffic study and mitigating issues regarding the unique location of this property. Finally, our architect, Justin Mihalik, can speak to some architectural overview, notwithstanding that the current petition is not site-specific, but we know there are questions. And then, of course, we would be happy to address any questions from the board and the public. And if we don't have immediate answers for you, we'll do our best to get back to you promptly. With that being said, I now would like to turn this over to Jesse Coakley to start with his portion of the presentation for this public hearing.
Thank you, David. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Again, my name is Jesse Coakley. I'm a senior project manager at Mazer Consulting and the engineer of record for this project. As David mentioned, the applicant wishes to operate a child daycare center on 2 lots located within the CGC district. Therefore, we were seeking a zoning amendment to the CGC district regulations to allow child daycare centers as a special use. As a result of the zoning amendment request, Planning Board requested study of the existing parcels located in the CGC zone district throughout the town. The zoning study that was submitted identified that the CGC zone is located in 3 different neighborhoods in the town of Mount Pleasant, known as Thornwood, Hawthorne, and Valhalla. The zoning study then provided a breakdown of the 64 parcels located across those 3 neighborhoods and included a summary of how the inclusion of a potential daycare center as a potential use could impact each of those 64 parcels. The zoning study included a GIS mapper of the tax map and aerial mapping, as well as an existing photo of the property taken within the last few months, as well as the description of the general use of the property today. In summary, other than the applicant's subject parcels, only 4 of the 64 existing lots within the CGC zone would be potentially suitable for childcare development as currently shown. In reviewing those 4 parcels, due to their current use and occupancy or the relatively recent improvements on those lots, the redevelopment of those 4 lots into a childcare daycare facility is highly unlikely. So taking those 4 lots out and the 2 that are part of our applicant's application leaves a remaining 58 lots that would not be suitable for child daycare development, as they would not fully comply with either setback and dimension requirements or the special permit conditions set forth in the Mount Pleasant Town Code, Section 218-99. So the conclusion of our zoning study was that the zoning amendment to CGC would not pose to be a detriment to the zone and the neighboring properties impacted. The planning board then agreed and gave their recommendation back to this board. So, as noted earlier by Mr. Venditti, this application is for the zoning amendment only, and that any specific development at this site would require a separate site plan application. However, we certainly acknowledge that the board and the public would have interest in understanding what a proposed childcare development would look like at the applicant's specific site. So I can briefly take you through that a little bit. I'm not sure if Nick is able to display those exhibits that were sent over, or how we want to do that, but I can kind of describe the site a little bit if not.
Mr. Supervisor, I wasn't given any documents, but I can find out if Amanda has them.
I can send them to you, Nick.
Okay, fair enough.
Specifically, Amanda, it would just be the PDFs that start with 05, 06, and 07. The last 3 that were in what we sent earlier.
Danielle, you have the zip file, right? The email that I sent you guys.
I do have the zip file.
Okay. You're forwarded to Nick? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sending it right now. You're welcome.
I could start with a brief discussion. So while hopefully he can pull that up, the subject site is located, as David mentioned, on 2636 Legion Drive. It actually is 2 tax lots, both in the CGC zone. One of them is tax lot 90, which consists of a 2-story concrete commercial building along with an asphalt parking area and a driveway. And lot 91, which is immediately next door, has an existing residential dwelling on it.
Mr. Coakley, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you tell me the document titles that you would like brought up, please?
The first one would be 05_190618.
Okay. Give me one moment, I'll bring that up.
Thank you so much. The 2 lots combined would be approximately 0.79 acres. So you can see here, for the purposes of this discussion, north is actually pointing down on the screen. You can see the north arrow in the upper left-hand corner. So Legion Drive is kind of running along the bottom of the page. Okay. So the 2 sites are in question. As I mentioned, lot 90 has the larger commercial building. You can see within the yellow area here with the asphalt parking lot. And lot 91 has the residential dwelling, which is to the right. South of the property, which is up on the page, are some residential homes. There are retaining walls between those properties and the subject properties here. The homes are at a higher elevation, and you can see there's some pretty good existing vegetation between the 2. There are commercial properties to the east and west of the site, and across the street is the American Legion. Legion Drive is a 2-lane, 2-way road. The commercial property right now is accessed by a curb cut on Legion Drive that immediately splits almost into a shared driveway that then goes to those other properties to the west, and then has a separate driveway for this property. Kind of directly above where you see the text Legion Drive on this plan is where the driveway kind of goes in. You can kind of see where the parking is a little bit curved straight ahead. Exactly. Thank you, Nick. That's exactly where the driveway is. And then what you can't see on this plan is on the right-hand side of the house where the trees are, it actually covers the driveway for the residential dwelling on lot 91 to the right. Exactly. There's a driveway under there now. So if you wouldn't mind, Nick, pulling up the next PDF, which is 06200407. Rendering reduced. This exhibit is what we call a proposed site plan rendering. It is, again, only at a conceptual stage and would be subject to full application review and approval from the planning board under a separate application. But here's a proposed colorized site plan kind of overlaid on top of the aerial. It's a little bit more zoomed in so you can see some of the detail on the site. But the development will combine both lots into a single tax lot. The existing commercial building will remain in its location, in its current place on the southeast corner of the property, but it will be renovated. The project will comply with all bulk requirements, with the lone exception being the minimum rear yard, which is the distance from the building to the property line, but that's an existing condition because the building is remaining as is. One of the benefits here for this redevelopment is that site access will be consolidated to one proposed driveway. So instead of having 2 lots with 2 driveways, we are closing off the prior commercial access and actually further relocating the residential driveway, we're eliminating that and kind of consolidating them to one two-way driveway that you can see exactly right there. That proposed driveway is about 200 feet from the intersection with Howard Drive, and it's about 100 feet away from the existing driveway to the American Legion. The existing parking area that's north of the building, as you can see on this plan, is going to be converted to a proposed playground. The parking layout has been reconfigured to allow for one-way counterclockwise movement through the site and provide 44 total spaces that complies with the zoning requirements. Specifically, the special permit regulations in Ordinance Section 21899 require drop-off spaces, which are a little bit wider than typical parking spaces. So those parking spaces that are up against the building with the sidewalk are all wider and comply with that requirement. Again, this is a conceptual plan. It's still subject to review by the planning board and their consultants, the planner, the engineer, et cetera. But one thing we are showing kind of representative here is some additional landscaping kind of at their installed dimensions here. So you can see a little bit of landscaping that we're going to look to add. I believe one of the requirements calls for some evergreen screening between the parking lot and in front of the playground. So that is in between the sidewalk and the playground. We are planting some additional trees in the landscape islands where we can. And then the front of the site will be dressed as well. And part of the area that is kind of shown in a lighter shade of green where the old driveway was would eventually be landscaped, or could eventually be landscaped as well. So we're happy to answer any questions on, the site layout, but overall there should be no impact to the town of Mount Pleasant as a result of the proposed zoning text amendment. And why we will still prepare that separate site plan application should we move forward with the zoning amendment. Overall, we would combine the two lots. The existing two-story building would remain but be renovated. The site improvements would include a playground, a revised parking lot, landscaping, and some stormwater improvements. And the site access would be improved from a circulation and safety standpoint because right now, one thing I didn't mention is the topography for that existing driveway is probably upwards of 15 or 16% to come into the site. It's very steep, which can be dangerous during the winter months. And it also makes for difficult sight distance, whereas the new driveway will improve both sight distance and be at a not nearly as steep a grade. So it would be a much safer ingress and egress as well.
Thank you, Jesse. And I seem to have solved my video dilemma, if you can all see me.
That looks nice.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I found out what my problem was. Jesse, thank you. And now we have David Falzerano of Lightbridge Academy, and I'd like him to share some insights with you as to this type of facility based upon actual knowledge of other Lightbridge academies, and what it might mean for the town, particularly as it may also relate to issues such as traffic, et cetera. So David, if you're there,
I'm here.
Take your portion, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for the time. I appreciate everyone coming together for such an important reason here. Obviously, wanted to just touch on operations and any form of questions you may have in that nature. My family started Lightbridge Academy as a franchise company 2011. We've been operating childcare centers since 1997, and we've helped launch and develop over 75 locations currently, with 45 operational, another 25 or so in development and construction, and like this project, in the process of going through approvals to start that construction. So my role primarily has been to work with all of our franchisees, helping them in site selection, competitive analysis, all of the parameters and demographic analysis that we do internally to help our franchisees make decisions, and then ultimately help provide all the training and assistance that we bring with 20 plus years of experience in launching childcare centers and operating successfully. So all of what I do is primarily launching and getting a center launched. And then we ultimately turn it over to our operations coaches and mentors and work with our franchisees for up to another 30 years in running childcare centers. Some things that are just unique about us, we will have at least one other location in Westchester County by the time this facility hopefully gets approved and constructed and built. That is right now in the final stages of construction in Elmsford, New York, not more than 5 miles away from this location. So we do think we'll have some brand recognition by the time this location does operate. We look at every one of our locations specifically and uniquely, not just the building and the property and how we can fit all the needed requirements of operating and developing children the way we would like to within our curriculum, but also safety concerns and some of those things that Jesse even touched on, and pitch of the driveway become details that are all a part of the experience that comes with interacting with us. And so our properties are very important to us, and so we work with our franchisees very closely on some of these details. Really want to talk about kind of the process of a customer, just to give you a quick rundown of how someone interacts with us on a daily basis. So we are early education. We start at 6 weeks old. We do have educational programs. Yeah, we do have educational programs for even the youngest of children in our care. We start with sign language at very young ages. And I will tell you some incredible stories if you wanted to hear me talk for the rest of the night. But I'll stick to kind of the basics. We have instituted camera technology within all of our facilities going back 20 years. We were really ahead of the curve in technology at that time. We basically live stream to a protected server, which allows our families to watch their children all day. We have families and grandparents and some of our greatest heroes stationed abroad watching their children interact with our customers, with our employees, I should say, as long as we're open. Typically, we open our doors at 6:30 a.m. That'll be determined by the planning board and also by the franchisee as to need. But generally, in areas as close to a train station as this one is, we usually are going to be opening around 6:30 to 7 a.m. And our customers are not required to drop off at the ring of a bell. We usually see that drop-off period transpire over the course of several hours, all the way up until about 9:30, as many parents have different work balance schedules, and so they're dropping off at any time they'd like. We do suggest to our families morning education programs usually start around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and so we would like for all of our children to be into the building if they're going to be there for full day care. Our typical customer is a 5-day-a-week student. They come 6:30 a.m. through 6:30 p.m. In the evening, same routine in terms of pickup. Actually, I should step back for a second. I should mention that in a drop-off scenario in the morning, we'll usually have 8 to 10 parking spots directly in front of the facility left vacant. Our staff will be notified and required to park further away from the facility, and giving our customer the opportunity to travel the least amount of distance within the parking lot with children. And so we like to designate those first few spots up front. We request and require that every one of our customers walk into our facility. So they must park their vehicle, exit the car, and bring their child into a vestibule area. They will then finger scan. Up until this point, that might be changing. We might be going into new technologies to avoid touch, but right now it's a biometric finger scan, which allows the door to electronically unlock and access the facility. Every family is given also a coded entry in case the finger scan isn't working on a rainy day or whatever the issue may be. But generally, a parent is required to walk into a facility, engage with their teacher, and drop their child off and hang their stuff on their hook. We've done plenty of studies here. We could tell you that right now it's about a 5-minute to 6-minute process. I can personally attest to the fact that I've dropped off multiple children at a time. And basically, that's the routine. You drop off, you say your hellos, you give a hug, and you walk out. In the evening, it's an even quicker turnaround. Most families want to get up and move and get home and do the nighttime routine with their children. And so it's run into the building, finger scan back in, open the door, get your children, and you exit the facility. All communication, all information is now electronically provided. It's been so for many, many years, in which we use systems to communicate and share videos and information with our parents on a moment-to-moment basis. Honestly, it's all about capturing moments and providing that information to families in real time. So some of the things I touched on are some security features, some access features. David, was there anything else you really wanted? Oh, I know I wanted to talk about the fact that customer breakdown. I know a big part of the conversation will be about, how we facilitate in the parking lot, and, how we manage kind of overflow and events that happen within our facility. So like I said, we're, 365 days a year. We take off national holidays. Our motto has always been, if the post office is open, we have to be open. So we're always open. And we need to serve families that are, working on a daily basis. And our customer is a dual income working family. And ever since 2008, I will tell you, most families and most communities we're in, we're blessed to have dual income working families. In current economic scenario, we hope to have the same coming out of this, and we believe we will, based on a lot of the conversations we're having so far. But a big portion of what we talked about, preliminarily walking into this conversation, that I want to touch on is really how our customer comes to us. We do a lot of marketing. Our franchisee is going to be spending upwards of $30,000 just to launch this facility for local area and online digital marketing. And in our experience in right now 45 operational locations, I can tell you that we have close to 15 to 20% of our customers, our children, will come from employees within the facility. So a lot of our staff come with children themselves. We also have a nice portion of our customer base that are going to be siblings as well. And so multiple children traversing in the same vehicle. What we find in our demographic analysis and our traffic reporting is that most of our customers are going to be residents within 2 miles of this location. That's pretty true in almost every market we're in. And we're in, all throughout New Jersey and several of Long Island markets. And it seems to hold true in every instance. Most of our customers, about 70%, will be residents of Valhalla within 2 miles of this location. The other 30% are going to be commuters. Now, those people have jobs already. They're already driving by Legion Drive or nearby, and or going down to the train station or traveling through. And so typically, being on a commuter path in a well-traversed market like this, we would expect that those customers that are already going down the street to the train station or through town to White Plains even would stop on their way. They wouldn't necessarily come from out of town or from out of network to come across town just to go to childcare. It is unfortunately still a convenience play for a lot of families. No matter what bells and whistles you sell or how good of care you give, a lot of families still make the determining factor based on convenience. And so those were the points that I think I wanted to touch on. David, was there anything else I missed?
No, that was it. I wanted you to speak, and you just did speak to the fact that in your experience with this, it's not really that we'll be adding more cars to the road. Those people will already be going somewhere to drop their kids off, and based upon where this is situate, they're likely already going to be traveling that route, going either towards the train station, town, or to commute into White Plains. Michelle, and thank you very much, David. Michelle, if you could then just, maybe briefly, because I'm not sure if maybe they want to move this along a little bit, but if maybe you could briefly run through and segue on to the presentation with your traffic study.
Sure. My name is Michelle Bryhoff. I'm a traffic engineer at Mazer Consulting. I'm a project manager within the traffic planning group. My main focus is traffic planning studies. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk the board through the numbers and the analysis that kind of lines up with what Jesse spoke about regarding the site plan, as well as Mr. Falzerano from Lightbridge and the operation characteristics of the daycare. So I'm kind of just going to put some numbers to that and just briefly describe the traffic study that we did perform for this site. Typically with any traffic study, we start by collecting the existing traffic conditions along the roadway. So we did do the data collection along Legion Drive. We did that actually in January of last year in 2019. And then typically what we do in order to determine, how many trips a daycare site like this would generate is we reference the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual, which kind of tells us that for, a 12,000 square foot approximate building, that we will see approximately this many trips. Now, with that trip generation methodology, it is just a straight number. Obviously, Mr. Falzerano spoke to the fact that, a lot of this traffic is already traveling along the roadways. It is neighborhood traffic. They live in the area. So this traffic is not necessarily new traffic to the roadway. It's kind of existing within Valhalla, existing along Legion Drive, perhaps. So it's not necessarily something that draws new traffic into the area. With those numbers, we grow them by 2 to 3 years to see what our projected volumes will be. And then we analyze them in some simulation software to see what the driveway, what the operations look like at the driveways. In this particular instance, we find that the driveway with our site generated traffic, with the traffic on Legion Drive, will operate at levels of service B or better, which is, very satisfactory levels of service. We also found that the queues within the driveway were approximately one vehicle waiting to exit the driveway at any given time, which obviously can be accommodated within the layout of the site. And we also looked at the parking. So we did find obviously that the parking that we're providing satisfies the ordinance. We are providing the pickup drop-off spaces that will be designated per the ordinance. We also referenced, again, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which also provides substantial parking information specifically for sites like this. We are providing 44 spaces, whereas ITE, based on their most conservative metric, would give us a total of 43 spaces. So again, we're just double checking the fact that we are providing an adequate number of spaces. And then we also included in our traffic study some data that we did collect at another Lightbridge facility. This one was actually in Cranford, New Jersey. And based on that, we found that the maximum parking demand was approximately 31 spaces, which is kind of what we see at most facilities. We see this 31, 35 range. The sweet spot is usually for these daycare centers anywhere between 35 and 40. So again, just confirming the fact that we are within the adequate parking range based on the ordinance, based on ITE, and based on this additional study. So with that, again, as Jesse mentioned, relocating the driveway further south on Legion Drive does give us better sight distance. The grade of the driveway will help facilitate the movements in and out of the driveway. So we feel like the driveway location is, a substantial improvement. We find that the traffic generated by the daycare facility will operate at acceptable levels of service, again, B or better. And we also find that the parking is more than adequate based on the ordinance, based on ITE, and based on similar studies that we have at other facilities. So with that kind of concludes my traffic study.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
No problem. Thank you.
I guess the last part that we would present to you, and again, even though we're not in a site plan application, but I know there are questions and we want to give the public a good overview of things, would be Justin Mihalik to give us a very brief architectural overview. And then we'll move to whatever questions you may have for us.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. This is Justin Mihalik. I've been working with Lightbridge Academy now for about 5 years as their corporate architect. And so this site, as we know, was an existing building, two-story building. It's a total of 11,464 square feet. And we did provide an architectural rendering as part of Jesse's package that you all may be able to look at, just to give you an idea of what we're proposing this building to look like. So the building will be completely renovated on the exterior. And it currently is a brick building, and it will be renovated to have stucco and some stone at the base and some more kind of modern look to it at the main entry, just to continue to work with the architecture of the building. Additionally, the center will have a playground that is 4,873 square feet. Jesse talked about the playground. It is fully enclosed by a 6-foot-high solid vinyl fence for the protection of the children, both from essentially being seen from outside the playground and as well as being distracted by what might be occurring outside. There are cameras that are also on the playground, as Dave Falzarano talked about, that they are inside the school. They are also outside the school. So safety is always a primary concern. The potential licensing for the school is 156 children with approximately 29 staff. And this is about the average as any other Lightbridge Academy of this size, and generally the average size is in the area of 11,000 square feet. Jesse did touch upon, again, just talking about safety. Many of you are familiar with this site, and the first thing that we really did make a priority on this site was to make a much safer entrance driveway to the site. And so Jesse did and his team a great job in accomplishing that, again, to make sure that the parents and the children were safe traveling in and out of the site. As well, you'll notice in the rendering, there are other, we show metal bollards that you see between the parking and the playground. So that's another just protective device that's used in the site to protect cars from potentially damaging the playground. So that's really what I wanted to at least give you some insight to tonight, just so you could see that we are making a drastic improvement to the existing building, to the community, in providing a really good childcare and educational experience here.
Thank you very much, Justin. Appreciate it. And at this point, we'll turn it back to the board.
Any members of the board have any questions?
I think we all brought our questions during the work session.
Right.
Right.
I don't know if Nick, did we want to open it up for does any of the public have any questions they want to ask?
Yeah, so I know I have one person in the queue that would like to speak on behalf of this agenda item. If there's anyone else in the public that would like to speak on behalf of this, please use the raise hand feature or message me privately, and I'll enable your video when it's your turn. Make sure you do have video on your computer. So I believe Mr. Noonan would like to speak. Time.
Good evening. Ken Noonan, Valhalla. I have a question for the board. Firstly, at the work session on the 7th of April, we listened to a presentation by Michelle regarding a traffic study. And there were a number of questions and serious concerns expressed by the board regarding the project. And yet 10 days later, or approximately 10 days later, the notice went out about this public hearing. My question is, what happened in that brief 10-day period to allay all these serious concerns that were expressed at the work session?
Well, nothing took place, Mr. Noonan. As was stated in the beginning, the process here is to look at the zoning of the property, not the site plan itself. The purpose of the planning board, which this would be referred to the planning board after this meeting, if approved by the board, they will look at traffic study, they will look at the whole site plan. That is the purpose of the planning board.
So will there be opportunity for the public to weigh in on this again?
Of course, that's the purpose of the planning board meetings.
Okay. My second question is about a franchisee. Do we have a franchisee at this time?
Is that question to us? Because yes,
yes,
Mr. Noonan, the petitioner is the franchisee. He's the contract vendee, the purchaser of the property, and he's also the franchisee. The petitioner is of what will be a Lightbridge Academy. So yes, you're the same. It's not to do this and then look for a franchisee.
So if he's the petitioner, does he do all this work that we're talking about on the property, or does your company do it and then turn it over to the franchisee? How does that work?
No, my understanding, and please, someone could unmute Mark Mathias after I'm done talking in case I've misspoken. But no, I would assume that he will do all the work and will engage the contractors in construction pursuant to his franchise agreement with Lightbridge Academy and be in it from day one through opening.
His name again is what? The petitioner?
The petitioner is Tunstall Holdings LLC. Mark Mathias is here on behalf of Tunstall Holdings.
Tungestel?
No, TUNSTALL Holdings LLC. It's a New York limited liability company.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, is that correct? What I just stated to Mr. Noonan? Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Mark? I didn't.
No, I was just agreeing. That's correct.
Okay.
I'm the franchise.
The next question is, I guess, for Mr. Falzarano. The hours in the evening for pickup. He didn't mention those. He mentioned the dropping off in the morning, but what are the hours in the evening for pickup?
So typically they start around 4 o'clock. Anytime after, what we would see is around 4 o'clock all the way through close, which is usually roughly around 6:30. Sometimes with the train station being so close, we'll have to make that extension to 7 o'clock just to provide families a little bit of that extra luxury of not having a rush on a train.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Noonan.
Anyone else like to ask questions of the petitioner?
Yes, at this time, Mr. Stefanov would like to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and enable his video.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best proposal I've seen for this property. I know over the years there's been talk about a drug treatment facility on the property and stuff. So a daycare center is probably the best proposal we've seen for the property. I live in the neighborhood just you know where I live, on the other side on South Kensico. But I've talked to some of the neighbors that live on Howard, and this facility is directly in their backyard. Now, my problem is really with the architect in the extension of the building on the northwest corner, which I believe at one of the work sessions, I think it's 8 or 10 feet high. And if you go to the houses behind the school, proposed daycare center, that'll literally be right in their back windows of their house. And I don't know why, especially we're talking about a zoning change, rather than putting an extension on the building high for a sign, where it is a residential neighborhood, perhaps a sign, street level, right on Legion Drive, is more appropriate for the type of neighborhood, as opposed to something more like the signage for, right now that the architect's designed is more for like an office park or something. It really doesn't fit in the residential neighborhood. I think the architect can do a better job with the design there in on that corner of the building. Okay, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Stefanoff. I'll let, if you can unmute Justin to speak quickly. I think he'll tell you probably that, I'm not sure if you mentioned something about an extension, but the exterior of portrait of the building is staying the same. And this is just a proposed rendering, and I'm sure signage as well as everything else will be part of the site plan review process.
Well,
at
the work session, he mentioned there would be like, I think it was 8 or 10 feet extension to the building.
Justin?
The parapet of the building, so the roof you're talking about. Yes, we're essentially increasing the height of the parapet of the roof, which is, essentially the wall, so that we're able to create more or less a sign band there. Just to talk a little bit about the neighboring properties. So the properties that are behind the building, they sit way above the building. There's a very steep incline of those properties. So they do sit, even more than above the roof of this building. The proposal right now is plus minus 22 feet, 11 inches. So considering it's not a very tall building, and that's the extension. That's to the top of that extension is only 22 feet 11. Right. The other thing is that when you take into consideration the design approach, is that as you can now, if you now look at the site plan, the way that people are going to be entering the site, that's the corner of the building that you're first going to be seeing. So of course we're trying to give it some architectural interest. And if you were to take a look at a Lightbridge website, the corporate website, you'll see that the buildings, the design of the typical center, the signage is kind of like the focal point of the building. It's not only signage, kind of part of the branding. But what I can tell you is that we will work no matter what to conform with the zoning ordinance, which would mean the height of the structure, the size of the signs that are being proposed. The other thing that was a little odd here, again, based on this site, is that where we had to locate the playground. So the playground is actually in the existing parking lot. And we're creating new parking lot, where the existing residential home is next door. So again, a lot of this had to do with the site itself, the particulars to the site, and how we had to then change the entrance and exit to the site, and how the building, played a part of that role, and how it actually is being seen from the parking lot. So, as was stated, I appreciate your feedback. Of course, we want the building to be appealing, and we want it to be welcomed in the community. Also, something that this rendering is not showing is that the building is pretty much surrounded in trees at the back side between the building and those neighboring properties. So there is also a natural screen there. But we will take that into consideration as we, then move forward to the planning board, hopefully, after this meeting, but, in the next steps of going before the planning board and hearing other comments.
Right. Well, I would recommend you take a look at, stand in front of 19 Howard, and even the town board should drive up that street, look at those houses, and look directly at their first floor and what'll be behind them. And that extension will literally be in those people's windows. So it's just something to consider. And it's still, I think a sign by the road would make just as much sense, especially in a residential neighborhood.
Well, we
Certainly,
will
we'll
be
take-
proposing separately a sign out at the road, clearly for people that are on the road, just so that there is some directional as to the location of the center. But that, that's kind of typical building signage that we use. But again, we'll definitely take it into consideration as we look at the design. So I appreciate the comment.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Stefanoff.
Can
Really
I,
good.
as a board member, just jump in?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I do believe we have an architectural review board. And in my experience, being on the town board, I think signage does fall within their parameters. Is that correct, Carl?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So therefore, we have another board that's going to be weighing in on that. I will also go a step further and say, Mr. Stefanoff, I do agree with you on this point. It is a residential area. And if Lightbridge can take a look at next door, across the street, the signage that the American Legion has. Now, I know that you want to put your branding up, but I'm looking at Valhalla itself, the village itself, and I don't believe, I can be wrong, that there is any signage that would be at that height. Again, please consider that it is a residential area. I know you have to advertise. I know families need to know where the entrance and exit are. Okay. But at that height in a residential area, it just changes the atmosphere. It changes what can you say? And I saw your sign. It's orange and blue, correct? Orange and blue. I think those are your colors.
Justin?
The colors are red, blue, and white.
Okay, red, blue, and white. Okay.
We're red, white, and blue.
Red, white, and blue, which is nice.
With
And
However,
there's green, it is actually green in the rainbow as well. So blue, green, and red is actually the colors.
all right, again, it doesn't really fit in. It's not my decision. However, I would consider that it is in a residential area, and signage that high might change the I don't know what the word is.
Character?
The aesthetic in Valhalla Village. So please consider that. Thank you.
We absolutely will. Thank you very much. Very much.
Well, again, these are the things that could be brought up at the planning board level, the discussion on the height of the building, the signage and all that, that could be handled through that process. Any other questions that we have for residents or from town board? Nick, I don't know if you had anybody else.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this issue?
Well, I guess I could ask the town board, if you're comfortable at this point, do you think we would be comfortable in making the recommendation for this zoning text amendment?
I am. I'm comfortable with it. For that
Sure.
prop.
Okay.
I am at this point also.
Danielle, Tom, you comfortable with the zoning text amendment?
Yes, I'm ready to vote too, Carl.
All right. Lori?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm okay with it now.
All right. Then I guess we'll take a motion. First, we have to close the public hearing.
So moved. To close the public hearing. Thank you.
Motion by Ms. Smalley to close,
Second.
second by Mr. Shulman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. As far as motion for amending the zoning text, Darius, do you have a specific wording that you want to use for, or it's just a zoning text amendment
Sure. It's
to allow daycares, centers?
to allow daycare centers in the CGC zone
Correct.
via special permit.
Okay. I need a motion and a second to move forward with that.
I'll move.
Mr.
So moved.
Smalley,
Yes.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
A second.
second by Ms. Zano. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. The resolution 17220 will move this to the planning board with the recommendation for a zoning text amendment. I thank you all for your the presentation and your patience during our Zoom meetings. Much appreciated.
And we thank you for all your courtesies and attention to this.
Thank you.
Have a good night and stay well.
You too.
Thank you. You too.
Good night.
Have a good evening. Congratulations.
I will move on to the supervisor's report then. Next thing is authorization to waive amend penalties for late payment of real property taxes through July 15, 2020, in coordination with the County of Westchester. As you know, we've been discussing this for a few weeks. All the town supervisors had an agreement within the past couple of weeks, and then the state stepped in and made some changes, so it kind of put a little kibosh on our agreement. But all in all, it's the purpose is to help our taxpayers, the ones that are struggling, to give them a little more time without a penalty. The description is on our town website, which describes who is eligible, who is not eligible. Those who can pay, those who are paying through escrow the payment will be due by Thursday, I believe it is. So this resolution will authorize us to make these changes to the tax penalties as specified in the paperwork that you have.
You need a motion?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion for approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
I second that.
second by Mr. Schulman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is authorization for the town supervisor to sign a license agreement for 10 Pamela Lane in Valhalla.
Is it
We-
16?
16.
I'm sorry, Carl. Is it 16 Pamela Lane?
16 Pamela Lane, that's what I have here.
Okay.
There's presently a wall there that's falling down. It's in the town right away. The owner of the property wants to rebuild the wall in its existing place. So this is just basically a license agreement with the property owner for him to rebuild the wall. The wall will be built according to the requirements of our town engineer. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward license agreement that we do anywhere in town where a resident may have a wall or steps or encroaching on town right away. So I would need a motion and a second to authorize me to sign the license agreement with this property owner.
I'll go ahead and move for approval, please, to sign the licensing agreement. Thank you.
Motion by Ms. Smalley,
Second.
second by Ms. Zano. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is authorization to sign the 2019 through 2024 New York State DOT supplemental agreement. As you know, we did previously approve the snow and ice agreement with New York State. This is supplemental. This is because of increased lane mileage that's been added to the agreement, which adds dollars to the amount that the town of Mount Pleasant receives from New York State for taking care of these roads. So this is just a, like I said, a supplemental agreement to our original DOT agreement. So I would need a motion and a second to move forward with that.
I'd like to make a motion for approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Saliano,
I'll second that.
second by Mr. Schulman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on. We have our receiver of taxes report. Just so you're aware, pretty much the tax collection to this date is, from what I understand, is above what it was at this point last year, surprisingly. So financially, I think we'll be okay so far. We are responsible to pay the county tax by March 25th, 60% of it. And that's whether we have it or not, we have to pay that. That's the law. The county is still looking at the possibility of maybe changing that percentage or the date, but our understanding right now is we will be responsible for paying 60% of the county tax by, I believe it's March 25th, but I can check on that.
March or May?
Or May.
May.
I'm sorry, May.
Okay.
Can't get out of March.
It was a nightmare.
It was. And then we pay the balance in October. But anyway, we'll move on to business move forward. If there's anybody in the public here that wishes to address the board on any topic, they're welcome to do so at this time. Nick, do you have anybody in waiting?
Yes, we do. Mr. Noonan from Valhalla.
Good evening again. Ken Noonan, Valhalla. My question is regarding the permissive referendum to authorize the lease of 407 Elwood Avenue.
Yes.
If I'm understanding this correctly, the deadline to submit a petition for a referendum would be May the 14th. Is that correct? It was adopted on April the 14th, and it says 30 days.
Yeah, there's a 30-day period for people to submit any comments they want to submit.
Yeah, the statute requires certain specifications, and it's all spelled out in the statute. Yes,
Right.
And in the notice.
And
Sorry.
so, but the deadline would be May the 14th. Am I correct?
I'm not looking at it right now, so I'm not going to be able to comment specifically on the deadline date.
Okay, but I've been trying to get a copy of the lease, the original lease, for about 2 weeks now, and I don't understand why it's so difficult. I was informed today from Susan that I'm going to receive it tomorrow, which is, April the 29th, and that leaves me only about 2 weeks in the event that I wanted to organize a petition. And I don't think that's right. If the normal period would be 30 days, now there's no way that the public could launch a petition, in 2 weeks. I don't think it's a very difficult thing to do.
Do you have specific objections to this lease?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the lease, and I don't know what I have. Why is it so difficult to get a copy of the lease?
Well, this was an amended lease that we were working on for quite a while.
Yeah, I got a copy of the amendment, but I didn't get a copy of the original lease.
Yeah, I'm gonna fax it to you tomorrow, Ken, as per my email, because I don't have a fax at home.
Well, thank you. But I'm just saying that now the deadline is 2 weeks from now, and in the event that I wanted to get a petition up, I only have 2 weeks instead of 30 days. That doesn't seem to be very fair to me.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Noonan, if you feel that you're not given enough time, we will work out something to give you an additional time, to give you a time to file a petition against this lease.
How much?
You feel that that's been, we're in an emergency situation. We're operating on limited staff. And because of the fact that all of our departments are not operating from our building, it makes it a little more difficult sometimes to get these paperwork together. My assistant's been digging through legal files to try to get together things that you have been asking for, not only for the Hawthorne lease, but you're also asking for the Valhalla one, which goes back over 30 years. So it's not that simple to pull these things together. So I would appreciate a little patience during this particular time. And if you feel that you do not have enough time to file your petition for whatever reason, I will make sure you get additional time.
Okay. Now, should I understand that you all, the entire board, had a copy of this petition in order to make a decision about amending it? Is that correct?
You mean the lease?
The board had a copy of the amendment to the lease. The lease is something that Some of our board members were here when we approved the original lease. Some of them are new.
I was here.
So we go by the recommendation of the town attorney as far as amending a lease. It wasn't that much of a challenge here. It was a matter of extending a lease and making sure that we were getting the proper amount. We were continuing the amount of the increase of 4%, I think it was a year, until the existing lease expired, and then continuing that lease for the specified amount of time. It wasn't like we were giving away anything. So these people invested about $500,000 in a building that was falling apart.
But the amendment to the lease refers to the original lease. So in order to understand the entirety of the lease, one has to have both items.
Well, we did have the entire lease. We reviewed, the town attorney reviewed it. I reviewed it with him. The town board was able to ask questions about the lease if they felt they had issues with it. So the town board was comfortable with the amending this particular lease. It was not a drastic change in the lease.
But did they have copies of the lease? Did Mr. Schulman and Ms. Zano?
No, I did not share the original lease with the board. We talked about the specifics of the lease and the amendments to the lease, which were not rocket science. It was fairly simple work to amend the lease, to extend it. That's basically what we were doing, was extending the lease, and the owners of the corporation, the names on the corporation had changed. We had to make those specific changes to the new extension, the amended lease. That was the biggest part of the whole thing, was adding the partners to the lease. That was the biggest thing.
But the rent was changed, am I correct?
No, the rent doesn't change until the original lease expires. Then the new lease picks up from that point forward.
And there's
At 4% per year.
per year, yes. Yes.
Yeah, I know. I could tell that from the extension, but I don't know how you could make an extension, make a decision about approving the extension if you don't know what the original lease is.
We do know what the lease was.
Well,
The terms didn't change. The terms that were changed were in the amended lease. We're on a merry-go-round going in the circle.
No, we're
The
not.
lease was written, it's been in effect for years. We talked about this at the last meeting. It was amended to add a term, 2 additional terms, I think, or was it 1 10-year term for an extension with additional monies. The terms of the lease did not change other than what's in the amendment.
But
The term of the lease existed for another 10 years.
As I said, the amendment refers to the original lease, and if you don't have the original lease, I don't know how you can make it.
I think we understand your position.
Yeah.
You could,
Well, I'm
could just-
gonna have a copy of the lease tomorrow, but I just don't, don't.
We understand your position, Mr. Noonan, on that.
Mr. Noonan,
Thank you.
I'll try and email it to you tonight after the meeting is over.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Let's see if I have anything else here. I guess not. Thank you very much.
Anybody else like to address the board?
Mr. Supervisor, at this time, no one else has indicated they wish to speak.
Thank you, Mr. DiPaolo. At this time, I would ask Susan Marmol, our town clerk, to read the town clerk's report.
Town Clerk's Agenda, April 28th, 2020 Town Board Meeting. Public hearing, amend Mount Pleasant Town Code to permit child daycare center in the CGC General Commercial Zoning District, Local Law Number 3, 2020. Receive Thornwood Fire District Oath of Office for the following: James Gedris, Chief; Ryan Rogers, First Assistant Chief; Thomas Olson, Second Assistant Chief. Received 1 zoning board resolution, 91 Old Farm Road North. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, there's not a lot for our council reports, just Mr. Shulman. He got the only job tonight.
Good for you.
Hey, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Are you ready?
Yes, we are.
Oh,
Go
we're
ahead.
ready.
All right. Oh, good evening, Mount Pleasant. Hope everyone is doing well. It's my pleasure this evening to present the Comptroller's memo, Resolution 176-20. beginning with computer, Sullivan Data Management, Inc., $41,329.09. Off-street parking, Midwestchester Lawn Service, Inc., $2,750. Recreation Administration, Tremont Offset, Inc., $3,850. Pool, Tremont Offset, Inc., $3,500. General Repairs, 3D Industrial, $6,976. Highway Machinery, United Rotary Brush Corporation, $1,887.76. Capital Old Farm Hill Water, Jokin Development Corp., $163,312.45. Kensico Capital Projects, Merritt's GIS Limited, and Ross Valve Manufacturing Company for $26,372.87. Mount Pleasant Sewer District, Global Systems Integrators, Inc., and New York Presbyterian Medical Group, Hudson Valley, $3,847.40. Joint Water District Fund, Global Systems Integrators, Inc., New York Presbyterian Medical Group, Hudson Valley, Schmitz Wholesale, Inc., and Ross Valve Manufacturing Company, Inc., $8,343.83. Mechanical Water District Number 1, Global Systems Integrators, Inc., Coin Chemical Company, Insignet Enterprises, Inc., $4,900.95. Kensico Water, Global Systems Integrators, Inc., Ross Valve Manufacturing Company, Inc., $18,416.43. Trust and Agency Escrow, Harris Beach PLLC, WASP Engineering Group PLC, for a total of $13,605.59. And the grand total this evening is $299,092.37. Move for approval, please.
Motion by Mr. Shulman,
Second.
second by Mr. Saliano. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And my second resolution is number 177-20. It's the authorization to appoint Thomas Zink as the full-time Deputy Controller effective May 18th, 2020, at an annual salary of $90,000. And again, this appointment will be effective May 18th or thereafter pursuant to provisions in the Governor's Executive Order number 202.4. May I move for approval?
Motion by Mr. Shulman,
Seconded.
second by Ms. Foley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jerry. Lori, I have nothing for you. Tom, I have nothing for you. And Danielle, we have nothing for you.
That's okay.
Wow.
You've all had enough to do. We move on to our scheduled meetings. Our next work session is on the 5th
Sorry.
at 7 p.m. And our business session will be on the 12th at 8 p.m. If there's no further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Tom,
Second.
second by Danielle. Motion and meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You well.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Safe,
Good
you well.
night.
Good
Thanks,
night. Thank
Paul.
you, Nick.
All the best.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Nick.
Nick.